girls at Seatack. We are beginning our beautiful journey of oyster gardening, and I'm here, Mrs. Culver, the gifted teacher, and I'm here with Miss Henry, who's behind the camera. There she is. Miss Henry, our instructional technology, and we're going to go on a great service learning project. So Miss Henry and I just put this float together, which is some piping, PVC pipe, and some netting. We're going to this is called the float, and we're on this beautiful day on a Monday at Owls Creek with Virginia Aquarium, which is right next door to Seatack. Seatack's right down the water. Owls Creek is our watershed, boys and girls, and our watershed, it's very important that we take care of our watershed because the watershed takes care of us. So I'm wondering how our watershed takes care of us. Think about that. So I'm watching someone on a kayak, so it's great for recreation, it's great for fishing, and it's great for growing oysters, and that's what we have. So in this cooler, as I showed you in the morning program today, congratulations, you are the parents, the proud parents of 2,000 baby oysters, which we call SPAT, S-P-A-T. Can you say that word? That's right, SPAT. So I'm looking at these oysters and looking at what are some words to describe the baby oysters. Let's think about their attributes. Color, size, shape. Miss Henry, what color do you observe?
Beyond the green netting, they look white, cream, maybe a little bit of brown.
Absolutely. And what shape do you see? I know our kindergarten first graders are focusing on shapes.
They look almost circular, but not a perfect circle. Maybe a little bit oval.
Okay. And what about the size?
They look pretty tiny. Some of them look almost the size of my fingernail.
Yes. And a lot of the adults,
a
lot of the adults that love to eat oysters at restaurants, we're so amazed at how small these oysters are. Now, boys and girls, what we're going to do with these is we're going to grow these oysters in our net and in our float, and then we're going to be measuring them and collect data throughout the year. And then at the end of the year, down at Owls Creek, right over here, there's a oyster reef that we're going to toss them right in the water, and they will colonize and make a beautiful reef. Now, in the meantime, I want you to think about, why are oysters good for our water? You know that? All right, Miss Henry, talk to them about that. Why are oysters good for our waterways?
Well, oysters are amazing for our waterways because they actually filter and clean our water. So the more oysters we have, the cleaner and healthier our water is.
And that's the goal. We want clean and healthy water. So congratulations to all of you for helping to be the proud parents. And we're going to actually put the oysters into the net. Boys and girls, so now we have our 2,000 baby oysters. Do you remember what that's called? That's right, SPAT. We're going to transfer that into our net, and then we're going to put the net into the float that we just built. So Miss Henry did a great job telling us the attributes of the oysters. She's pouring them in carefully out of the net. 2,000 baby oysters. What a beautiful day for these oysters and us.
And we can come and get a close-up if you want.
Sure.
Inside.
There they are. Do you see them, boys and girls? Remember, we were looking at the attributes of the color, the size, and the shape. The quantitative data would be that there's 2,000, and the qualitative data would be what the color, size, and shape we were looking at. So now we're going to take the net, and we have the smaller zip ties. Miss Henry is a great assistant, and she is going to take them and fold them in half like it's an envelope, right?
Just like it's an envelope.
It's going to put them through, and this is so when we put them in the water in Owls Creek that they will be protective from predators. I'm wondering if you can figure out what would be a predator of the oysters. What do you think? Talk about that with your friends. What do you think would be a predator of the oysters? All right, we have lots of different things. Miss Henry, do you remember what some of the predators were?
Well, one that you can actually find each time we go and clean the net and change it out and take our data are these little tiny guys. You might think that they're not that harmful, but there's these little tiny worms that can really harm the oysters as they're growing. Are they still there? You could show it to them.
Yeah, but do one more just in case.
Okay.
All right, we're trying to be overly protective as parents. You know how sometimes your parents are overly protective? Well, we're like that too with our baby oysters. There we go. So now we're going to put them in our float. Can you tell them, Miss Henry, how this works?
So basically what we want is we want our oysters to be floating with the water. So the PVC pipe is going to be at the top of the water and the rest of the cage is going to be under the water. And the float, this bag that we have them in, is going to be secured to the cage part, and it's going to be floating within the PVC pipes. So it doesn't float away and they're safe from predators.
The other thing we wanted to share with you is we know about tides. So tides, there's the low tide and the high tide, and depending on the tide, it is, can you look to see where you think it's going?
So we want to make sure that we leave a certain amount of rope so the float can rise with the tide and then also fall with the tide while it's tied off. We don't want it out of the water because we tied it too close to the floating dock.
Last year we had to get new line because last year, because of the storms, it barely held on. So what we're doing, boys and girls, is we're using zip ties again, and Miss Henry is tying them to the cage. So boys and girls, we're going to be collecting data 3 or 4 times this year. We will collect the data. We'll come over and get the oysters out, and then we will measure with 1st and 4th grade, and then we will share that data with all of our Seatack scientists, and hopefully we're going to see a nice pattern of change with growth.
Perfect. All right, so we're gonna go down and attach our oysters to the floating dock.
So now, boys and girls, oh, it's just, I can't even tell you. It's about 70 degrees on a beautiful fall afternoon. And we're gonna take the float, put it in the water. Remember, 2,000 baby oysters right in our net, in the float, in Owls Creek. And I know some of you in kindergarten are studying about water this year. So we're looking at things that float. This is a float, and it's floating on the water in Owls Creek. She's just checking everything out. How's it look?
Looks pretty good to me.
All right, what do you like about what it looks like?
The oysters are submerged, which is good.
That means they're under the water.
They're spread out. They're not too much on top of each other.
Can you see the oysters?
Yes, they're right here.
And the water is clear.
The water is very clear. You know, we can measure something called turbidity, which is the amount of sediment in the water, and that changes throughout the year as well. And we can be taking baseline data for that as well. And we're also going to be taking the temperature of the water and the salinity of the water. And we use a really fancy instrument called a refractometer.
Oh, I just happen to have one brand new one right here.
Oh my gosh, that's so exciting. And we actually can hold it up to the light to see the amount of salt that's in the water.
Right. So we're going to tie this onto the pole, right? Yep.
And then remember how we said with the tides, we want to make sure we give enough slack for the tide when it gets low.
Our friend Brian from Virginia Aquarium is going to share with you what he is seeing. What do you see, Mr. Brian?
Looks like we're just after high tide.
All right, so we're just after high tide, so that's actually great timing, right? So how much?
So we want to make sure that we leave a little bit of slack, for the outgoing tide, so our float stays submerged in the water. And we can look into things called tidal swings, which really vary on our geography, but since we're kind of in the middle, mid-Atlantic, our tide swings, and we're right on the coast near the ocean, it's not quite as big of a tide swing as some other places. So I think probably like this much.
And then each time we come, we'll just pull the float in, come up, take the oysters out, bring them back to Seatack to measure them. As long as we had them out just for 24 hours, they should be fine. So boys and girls, here it is. We have our float with our 2,000 baby oysters, which is called Spat, which has a line tied to our floating dock, which is on Ouse Creek, which is our watershed at Seatack. Seatack is right up the creek, and it is a